Okay, this is how to use a spreadsheet and graph with a spreadsheet. This is going to be a great tool for you guys to learn. There's a lot of things that you can do with spreadsheets, and we'll keep adding to this these tutorials on different things that we can do with spreadsheets. But this one specifically, I'm going to show you how to enter data and how to graph that data. And we'll just try some simple data from our massing lab, and then we'll move on to the density lab. So first, you're going to open up an Excel spreadsheet. So on my computer, when I go to the desktop, it's going to be, and let's see how slow it's uploading a video. So right here is where I have Excel, and that's where you would go. So you go to the Excel and open it up, open a new document. Then what I did was I typed in, and when I typed these in, it was really small. You know, the cells were really small, and so when you type things in, it will scroll out and you can't see. So when you're typing, it shows up here what's in that cell. If it doesn't fit, you can scroll onto that, click on A, and open it up. And you can click on B, and you can open that up and make it all fit nice. You can also click here, and you can go to, I had to go to Home, and then Format Cells. And there may be faster ways to get to these items, but I'm showing you this way. So Wrap Text, I can also do borders. I kind of like having borders. Font or alignment, I like maybe center and centered and all of those kinds of things. Now I could do a background color. Let's just make a background color. Well, let's do something different here. Well, if you can't, if it's too dark, you won't be able to see it. Let's just pick this color. Okay, so I'm going to put a background color on there. So you make your graph a different color. That's not that big of a deal. And then we can also bold everything or make the numbers bigger. And then you notice that these went time and then days underneath. So the way I got that is I'm going to go here, Format, Cells, and Alignment. Wrap Text means that it will scroll down and go around. If you don't have it that way, let's show you what it's going to do when it's not. Then you'll have to make your cells bigger to fit it this way. Sometimes you want your cells to be smaller this direction so that you can fit things on the page going around or going across. So I kind of like this because I like time, and then I have days. So in the headings, when you make a graph in the spreadsheet, you want to put the heading and the units at the top of the spreadsheet, and then what those units are, only the numbers underneath. And there's a reason for that, so that you can get in. We'll get to that in the future with formulas. So time, days, mass, and grams. What I did was we did an initial massing, which was day 0. So that was our first day, but it was before a day had taken place. Then after a day took place, we had 1 day, then 2 days, 3 days, and then we massed it on the 4th day. Now this data is data that I just made up. This was nobody's data. And so once you have the data entered, so you'd put what was the mass that you started with, what was the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and you just enter that. Now I can highlight this data. This square is highlighted up here. You can see it. I start on that square, go over and go down, and I want to make sure it's all in there and it's all enclosed, and you can see that square around it. Then I'll go to Insert, and I'm going to insert a chart, and you can see right here are my charts. And probably we would all think to do a line chart, but line charts are different. What we're actually doing is plotting data, and then we'll connect it with smooth lines. So here is the graph that goes with that data. Now, earlier today, I showed them how to use graphing on the old style or on a different computer. So now this computer is going to have this in a different way. So if you look, I'm clicked on this graph. If I go right here to the next style or this button beside it, it says Chart Styles. If I click on that, different options come up. So I can see those are just different styles there. I can pick some colors, and I don't know why the color didn't go. But now I can do chart filters, values, names. But this button right here is the one you need. So chart elements, things that we need to add to our chart. One thing we need to add is a chart title. Now we do have one up here, but this really isn't a chart title. That was an axis, right? So what this chart is showing us is the mass of organism in water over time. So as time went on, you can make up a title that maybe suits you better, but something that tells you what we were massing. What is this graph telling us about? Now, if you look down here, we have the axis title. I can double click on this axis title. Sometimes it's kind of goofy, but I can delete axis title. And now down here, this should be days, right? So this is our time period, and our time period is in days, so we put days in parentheses. This axis title is going to correspond, and if you look, we're on axis title here, and I'm going to try to get in there so I can delete that down. Then I'm going to backspace. This axis title is our mass, and we measured in grams, so then you'll put grams there. So now we have our title, we have our axis titles, anything else we want to add, we could add grid lines, we could have minor horizontals, and we could have minor verticals. So you can see you can make it more like a graph paper. We can put in data labels, and I put them in, took them off. We can do legend. I don't prefer to have a legend. Trend line, so you can kind of get an idea. They just draw the straight line that would connect all those dots. So sometimes we'll do that when we have vehicles that are, when we're doing speed or things like that. So here is our graph. Now to print this graph, we want to click on this graph, and then we're going to print from here. So make sure you're on this graph when you hit print, because if you don't, then you're going to print the spreadsheet along. So if you're clicked over here and you hit print, it's going to print all of this stuff. It's going to print this whole area, the spreadsheet plus this graph. So what you're trying to do is just print the graph. So click on the graph and then hit File, Print. And it should give you a preview, and you can see you're just printing the graph. And that is all we're going to learn for now on the Excel spreadsheet. So the last thing we're going to do is a simple graph of density, so that we have a graph for density. So if we think about in our lab, what can we graph in that lab? What kind of data do we have that we can graph? Well, we found the density of the wood block using grams per milliliter, and then we found the density using grams per centimeter cubed. So that's one thing. So density, we could do density and grams per centimeter cubed, and there is a way to do cube, but I'm going to do it speedy here. And then we can do density, and we'll put grams per milliliter. And there we go. And I can just make those bigger. So I'm just going to make up some numbers. So 0.895 we found that way, and then how about 0.921 this way. And then we would highlight these two. We're going to insert, make a chart. Probably this one would make sense to make a column chart, something that'll compare the two. So now we can see that those densities, according to this, look very far apart. So they weren't very close. Now, our chart title here was Comparison of Densities of a Wood Block. Okay, and then we would have, and you can see grams per milliliter, grams per centimeter cubed, and then we'd have to label that axis. which that would be the axis that we're looking for. And this here is our density measurement, if I can get on there. So this would be density. And the units, this one is grams per centimeter cubed, and this one's grams per milliliter. But the density is going to be what is shown here. So you can see, according to our graph, there looks like a big difference. Now, I just made those numbers up. You would put your two densities that you found in there. You could also put the density of your metal compared to the density of the wood block. So density wood block compared to the density of the metal. And let's say our metal was nickel, and then the wood block. And let's say we got the wood block was 0.895 and the density of the metal was 8.76, and I just was looking back at that last data. You would highlight that information, insert, and probably a bar graph, and you would have a chart. And this would be a chart title, I think appropriately would be density comparison, I got to do it capitalized, comparison of wood, if I can capitalize, versus metal. So it gives you a comparison of the two. So when you collect data, think about what data, how you can graph that data. What would be an appropriate graphing of the data to show you? And so you just get a visual, and then you make your data tables. A lot of times the labs will tell you what to graph in the labs, so you don't have to think about what you need to make. For the density one, we had to think about it, so we made two. We had a couple sets of data that we could graph. So then you would print this graph and print this graph, and you would add it to your lab notebook. So that ends this tutorial. I will also link this Excel spreadsheet so you can kind of go in here and look at the graphs and kind of see what I did. And if you have trouble because your computer uses a different format, I can help you out on that. Sometimes instead of having this little X here, when you click on the graph, there will be a format button up here. It'll say chart tools, and you'll have to find the axis, and the chart titles and everything will be up here. So just be aware that sometimes this version has it over here, this computer. Some computers will have the formatting, the chart up here. That ends this tutorial. Good luck, and let me know or email me with questions or text me with questions. Thank you. Bye-bye.